They finally admit it. They admit they're drinking too much or that their drug use is a problem. Or they admit that they lied, broken promises, damaged trust, or scared the people around them. And for a moment, you feel relieved. You think, finally, we're getting somewhere. They see it now. But nothing changes. They don't make the appointment. They don't follow through with treatment. They don't go to the meeting. They don't talk to their doctor. And they don't stop the behavior. Or maybe they make a small change for a few days, but before long, you're right back in the same situation. And you're left wondering, if they know there's a problem, why do they keep doing the same thing? Now, this answer is uncomfortable, but it's important. Sometimes people know something is a problem and they still don't want to change it. We tend to assume that awareness automatically creates motivation. We think, once someone truly understands how serious the situation is, they will naturally want to fix it. But that's not really how people work. We can know something is hurting us and still want it. People stay in unhealthy relationships even though they know the relationship is hurting them. They remain in jobs they hate. People ignore health problems. They overspend, procrastinate. They continue patterns they already understand. Knowing there's a problem is not the same as being ready to give up the pattern. And addiction, yes, it provides something. Maybe it provides relief from anxiety, pressure, shame, loneliness, boredom, trauma, or insecurity. It may provide excitement, connection, confidence, or an escape from thoughts that they don't want to sit with. Whatever consequence the addiction is creating, there's also a perceived benefit. Now, that benefit may not make sense to you. It may not even make logical sense to them. But in the moment, it's still valuable. So internally, they may be telling themselves, yes, I know this is damaging my marriage, but I still don't want to imagine never drinking or using or gambling or whatever it is again. Yes, I know I'm spending too much money, but it's the only time I feel like I'm okay. Yes, I know my family is losing trust in me, but I don't think I can handle life without it. Or maybe it's even simpler than that. It could sound something like, yes, I know this is a problem. I'm just not ready to give it up. That doesn't necessarily mean their admission was fake. They may have been completely sincere when they said it, but problem awareness is only one part of the change process. There's a difference between recognizing that there's a problem, wanting relief from the consequences, and actually being willing to change. Those are three separate things. A person can recognize that their drinking is creating problems. They can desperately want the arguing to stop. They can want you to trust them again. They can want the financial pressure, the health scares, the embarrassment, the guilt, all of that they want to go away. But they still may not want to stop drinking. They may want the consequences of the behavior to stop without wanting the addiction itself to stop. And this is where families get really confused, and because they're confused, they mess it up. Because once the person admits there's a problem, the family immediately starts offering solutions. They say things like, let's call a treatment center. Let's find a counselor. You could go to a meeting. Let's talk to a doctor. I found an outpatient program. I'll go with you. And every idea gets rejected. Like they may say, that place is too far away. That program's too expensive. I don't like meetings. I don't need counseling. I can do it on my own. This isn't the right time. I can't take time off work. They'll deal with it after work settles down, after the holidays, after the next event, after one more attempt to control it themselves. So the family just keeps searching for better solutions. But sometimes the problem isn't just that you haven't found the right solution. Sometimes the problem is that you and your loved one are working towards completely different goals. Your goal may be recovery, while their goal may be getting everyone to calm down while changing as little as possible. Your goal might be abstinence, and their goal could be providing. Your goal may be rebuilding trust through transparency, and their goal could be getting their privacy and their freedom back as soon as possible. The difference here matters because you cannot persuade someone to accept a solution that they have not accepted the goal that that solution is designed to accomplish. If this kind of information helps you understand what's really underneath addiction and denial, make sure you subscribe to this channel. Because over here at Put the Shovel Down, we don't believe that families should sit around and wait helplessly for someone to hit bottom. There are strategic ways to respond that protect you while also making change more likely. Now let's get back to the topic. When someone admits there's a problem but nothing changes, the natural reaction is to push harder. You remind them of what they admitted. You said yourself that there's a problem. You told me you were going to get help. You know what this is doing to us. You know where this is headed. But pointing out the contradiction usually makes them just defend themselves even more. They minimize the problem again, accuse you of pressuring them, or tell you that nothing they ever do is good enough. And suddenly you're back arguing over whether the problem is really a problem, even though they already admitted it. A better response is to slow down the conversation. Don't rush past the admission. Don't immediately start presenting solutions. Let them hear themselves talking about it. If they say, I know I'm drinking too much, you might simply mirror it back by saying something like, you've been thinking maybe it's getting out of hand. Or it sounds like you're getting more concerned about it. Or part of you is starting to feel like this isn't working anymore. Those kinds of statements, they don't pressure or corner them. Those kind of statements don't tell them what they should do next. They simply show that you heard what they said. And the really cool thing about that is it usually makes it easier for them to keep talking. Sometimes the best follow-up is a very simple question, like, what's got you thinking about that? That question feels natural. It doesn't sound like an interrogation, and it invites the person to identify their own reasons for being concerned. They might say something like, I'm tired of feeling terrible every morning. I hate how much I've been lying. I'm worried the kids are starting to notice. I can tell you don't trust me anymore. I'm scared I'm going to lose my job. When they say things like that, now they're the one naming the cost, the consequences, which is super helpful because people are usually much more influenced by the reasons they hear themselves say than the reasons someone else gives them. Another thing that helps is empathy. Also helps the person become more honest about the conflict they're experiencing. You might say, I can see why this feels complicated. Part of you wants things to be different and another part of you isn't ready to give this up. Or you could say something like, it makes sense. This is hard. It's creating problems, but it's also something you rely on. Saying that kind of thing isn't excusing the behavior. It's not you trying to minimize the damage. It just acknowledges that there is a real conflict. And when people feel understood, they're more willing to talk honestly about the part of them that's afraid, resistant, or not ready. And that's where motivation begins to grow, because admitting the problem doesn't automatically create motivation. Awareness and motivation are not the same things, and families often accidentally shut down motivation by pushing too quickly. The person starts to express concern and the family jumps in with, exactly, that's why you need treatment, or you finally get it, or I've been telling you this for years. Then why don't you do something about it? And just like that, the person feels cornered. They pull back, they minimize, they defend, they change the subject, or they say something like, it's not that bad, you're exaggerating, I can handle it. And now that little window that you had open, it closes. Not because the concern wasn't real, but because the conversation moved too quickly from their awareness to your solution. I know you've been waiting a really long time to hear those words and to get them to admit it and acknowledge it. That's good change talk. Yes, I want you to clock that, but don't pounce. Because the goal is not to force them into a decision in that moment. The goal is to keep them connected to their own concern long enough for it to grow. That may feel strange, but I want you to know it is different than enabling. It's not pretending the problem's not serious. You can show empathy and still have limits. You can listen without agreeing to continue living with the same behavior. You can recognize that they're conflicted without taking responsibility for solving that conflict for them. Because this is where families have to be careful not to confuse admission with commitment. An admission sounds like, I know I drink too much. A commitment sounds like, I'm making an appointment. I'm telling the truth even when it makes me uncomfortable. I'm changing my routines. I'm willing to accept help. I understand rebuilding trust will take time. I'm going to follow through even after this immediate crisis passes. Listen less to how strongly they describe the problem and more about whether their behavior shows willingness, because you can appreciate the admission without pretending it represents more change than it actually does. You could say, I'm glad you were able to see this is becoming a problem. And then just pause. You don't have to force the rest of the conversation. You can just say something as simple as, hey, thanks for telling me that, or I'm glad we can talk about these things. You don't have to force the rest of the conversation. Just let them keep talking and hold your own truth. Like, I'm so glad you recognize it. I also can't keep acting like everything's okay with the same pattern if it continues. Both things can be true. They may not be ready to change, and you may not be willing to keep participating in the situation the same way, but don't try to force their readiness, because you also don't have to abandon your own judgment, safety, or limits while you wait for it. This is one of the main things we work on inside the Denial Breakthrough Intensive. It's easy to see the problem from the outside, and most families, they just want to point the problem out. But what family members don't know is how to respond in a way that lowers defensiveness and helps the other person connect with their own reasons for change, because those are the ones that are going to get them motivated. We talk about how shame and defensiveness keep denial in place. We talk about how to use empathy without enabling. We talk about how to recognize and strengthen change talk. And we talk about how to have conversations that increase motivation instead of pushing the person further into resistance. Because getting someone to admit the problem is not the finish line. The next step is helping that motivation grow. Admitting the problem does not automatically motivate change, but there are ways to respond that makes change more likely. Now, you can find out more information about the Denial Breakthrough Intensive in the description below this video. But your biggest takeaway, the thing I want you to remember, is that knowing there's a problem doesn't mean someone wants to change. Wanting the consequences to stop doesn't mean they're willing to give up whatever is creating those consequences. And an admission is not the same thing as action. So don't ignore the admission, but don't build your entire sense of hope around it either. Slow down, listen for their reasons, reflect what you hear, make room for the conflict that they feel inside. It's natural. And then just watch what happens next, because that's where their real level of willingness is going to show up. And that's the thing you've really been waiting for.